So today I'm going to try to present you a good protocol to answer a question that I get asked a lot, and is should I work out today? And if I work out today, how hard should I push? Right? And so I get two types of questions here, or two types of scenarios. The first scenario is that of the person that is not feeling very good that day, and they're like, I don't know if I should work out or not, but I feel lazy if I don't. I feel guilty and I feel like I should. Right, and so that's one type, and one of the most common types. The other common type is like the person that is like, I don't feel that ready. I feel like I lack motivation, and like they will tell me like, how do you find motivation, or like how, and I feel like the expectation there is that they think they should feel ready, like really ready to work out, right? And these are just two types of, like an infinite manifold of possibilities. But the question is very important. Is like, should I work out today? How do I know if I should, or how hard to push? And for some people, the answer is very simple. For some people, it's like, yeah, you should always work out. But I don't think that's the case. And so what I'm going to present you today is a test that you can do on your own. Always, it's very simple. It's composed by 4 different tests, subtests, or aspects that will give you a good reading of your state. Right, that's what we're trying to find. So what I would like to give you is a protocol in which you can be like, any given day, like read your data and be like, yeah, I can work, or I should work, and this is what I should do, right? The idea behind this idea is because I'm working on a broader topic. I really am digging into the idea of reading your body, for lack of a better word. Like you're always listening, you're always hearing people say listen to your own body, and I feel like that listen to your body captures a habit in which you're just kind of listening, but it's kind of a passive thing. And I like the term reading. I don't think it's that much better, but whatever, I'm biased there because I like to read, but I like the term reading because it kind of implies that you have to like try to parse a code, right? Like it's more active in the sense that like you have to have some level of literacy to understand what's going on. And I think you can have that level of literacy, and so that's like maybe I'm just being silly and I'm just changing a word there, but I do think that taking the responsibility of understanding how your body works is very important, right? And so the test that I'm gonna give you today tries to answer that. Good. That's the first thing. That's the purpose today. In terms of logistics, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present you 4 different tests. And what I want you to do is you should work on those tests for at least a month and create a baseline, right? So take all your measurements for each test. It's just one measurement per test. Create a spreadsheet, and I explained this a little bit more at the end of the video, but like you create a spreadsheet and have a baseline of your tests. And then that's where the magic starts happening, or that's where the good things come. And is that you're gonna wake up one day and you'll be like, oh, should I work out or not? And you'll do your test and be like, yeah, I should run a 10K today, right? And that's the idea that I got for you here. And so so I hope you enjoy this, and let's go right away into the first test. So the first test is very simple. From 1 to 10, you should answer how ready do you feel to work out. Completely subjective measure. Rate of perceived readiness has been studied, has been actually analyzed for runners. It does coincide it has a very big correlation with lactate threshold and red blood count, and so it's not, even though it's subjective, it doesn't mean it's not meaningful. And so what you're going to answer is like, how ready do I feel to work out? 1 is I'm gonna stay in bed. There's 0 chance that I'm gonna work out. And not out of laziness. You don't feel ready at all. Like you feel like you need to stay in bed. You're not even going to work. Like you're doing nothing. That's how ready you feel. And 10 is like, I can't wait. I just wanna move. This is the best day of my life. This is what I want to do, right? And what you'll see is that you most of your days you're gonna be like a 6 or a 5 or a 7. Like We often are not there, especially for those that work out early in the morning. As soon as you wake up, you're not gonna feel like many days you don't feel that. But that's your first test. And again, this test by itself is not very meaningful, right? And so what we want is to create a baseline of that test, see how you feel. And as we said before, we're gonna create a baseline. So do this for 1 or 2 weeks. Every time before you're gonna work out, how ready do I feel? Saying a number. And if your baseline is 4, when you're in a 6, that's a good day, right? If your baseline is 4, that will be a little bit low, but you know, is gonna be important to have that baseline set to your measure, because for some people really love to work out, and so they're gonna be on a natural 7 or 8, and for some people, like, they don't like to work out that much, and so they're not gonna feel as ready, right? And so it's important, like, to accept the fact that this is a subjective measure, and that's why we want to create a baseline there. So rate of perceived readiness, test number 1. Test number 2, this is called the BOLT test, and it's a breathing exercise. It's very simple, and it's gonna be giving us information about the readiness of our cardiorespiratory system. So what you're going to do is you're gonna do this before you warm up, right? 10 minutes before, you know, like, it's short. So what you'll do is you'll sit there, maybe meditate a little something, maybe you drank your coffee, and after that you're gonna calmly breathe for 2 seconds, for 2 minutes, and then you're gonna inhale naturally through your nose and exhale naturally through your nose. And as soon as you exhale, you are gonna pinch your nose and start a timer at the same time. Pinch your nose, start a timer, and you're gonna measure, you're gonna watch that timer, and you're gonna look for the first sign that you're uncomfortable without breath. And that's gonna happen way faster, right? So it can be that, like, you're salivating a little bit. It can be that, like, your muscles in your abdomen are already, like, reacting, or it can be that you feel like lots of discomfort. And for some people that's gonna be like 5 seconds in. For some people that's gonna be 15, and for most of us it's gonna be something between 16 and 20. If you're interested in this test, go and check Patrick McKeown, who has a whole book, The Oxygen Advantage, on the topic, and it's great, and, like, you can improve that test, and improving that test has a great impact on cardiovascular, cardiorespiratory fitness. But for us, for the purpose of this, all that we want is to create, again, a baseline, right? And so if usually you're at 15 and suddenly you're at 8, that tells you that your cardiovascular respiratory system is not optimal, and maybe doing a 10K is not the right thing for you today, right? Like, you have to give it a chance. Maybe doing some light yoga and really focusing on breathing exercises is actually gonna be better, right? And so again, what you do is you inhale, you stay calm, before this warm up, relax for a minute or 2. Then you're gonna inhale naturally through your nose, exhale naturally through your nose. As soon as you exhale, you pinch your nose, close your mouth, and start a timer. And on the first sign of discomfort, be it physically, psychologically, you watch your clock, and that's your time, and that is your score. That's the BOLT test. Nice. Our third test is device dependent. So we have so many devices nowadays, and so what we're gonna do is I would like you to track 2 measures if you have access to them. First, resting heart rate, very telling measure of, you know, like, how your general state is. So I know that if I'm really in a period of high stress, my resting heart rate is gonna go up to the 60s, but usually, like, on the 40s, the high 40s, low 50s, right? And so that is the first one. For resting heart rate, you don't need anything but your fingers, and you can Google how to measure your heart rate, and do it as soon as you wake up. You measure it, and that is gonna be your measure, right? But if you have a device like a smartwatch or something, those are reliable for resting heart rate. They're not very reliable for anything else, but they're very reliable for resting heart rate. And so
the important thing is like to make sure that that you're consistent with the use of that device, right? Like your battery is like always kind of the same. That's kind of impossible, but like if you charge them at night, that's gonna give you better results. You're putting your watch almost in the same place always, and so on. That is the first measure. And the second measure of this same test is HRV, heart rate variability, which is a super interesting measure. You can read all about it online, but like heart rate variability is really measuring how how ready is your body to go from a parasympathetic state to a sympathetic state. How can it go from a state of relaxation to a state of stress? If you can make that pass really fast, if it can be responsive to both sides of the spectrum, if you can get stressed and get calm at the same time, you're fit to work. Sometimes what happens is that your heart rate variability is very low because you are in either state and you're not fit to work. Usually you're very stressed, and so your heart rate variability, your heart is going to be working very consistently. It's going to just be responding to stress events, and so you're not going to be very fit to work, right? And so what the heart rate variability does is measure that ability to move through the autonomic spectrum. Good. Measuring heart rate variability requires devices that can do that accurately, and so if you don't have access to that device, I will just stay with our previous two tests and the resting heart rate, right? But if you have access to those devices, focus on that HRV measure. If you have access to a device like a Whoop, that is gonna give you their own readiness or recovery measure, that could be a measure on itself because it's taking into account all those things. Good. That's our third test. And our fourth test, I'm gonna take it to the garage because it's a physiological test. Physiological test will do a toe touch test. This is a super traditional, classic test. We'll do it on a bench. You can do it on a box or do it on a bench. So what you're going to do is you're gonna stand here. You're gonna lock your knees out. You're gonna hinge at your hips, right? So I'm hinging at my hips. I'm not just like bending over. I'm gonna be hinging at my hips, and then I'm gonna go down as low as I can, and I'm gonna measure. So for me, right now, the measure will be like right in the middle there, right? Because I use the base of my palm as my reference, and I know that like in my baseline that I created for me, when the base of my palm hits the edge of the bench, I'm good. That is my normal. That's my standard. That's where I'm mostly at. Good. Things that you want to take into account. First, you want to do this test after you have warmed up a little, right? Second, so go through your regular warm up. Second, this test is super reliable, right? If you're stiff here and one or two of the other indicators that we talked about is not good, yeah, that's it. Like, take it easy that day, like whatever it is that you need to do. But if all the other indicators are good and you're a little bit stiff here, feel free to do some mobility, gain that range of motion. If you can gain that range of motion, then you're good. But if you cannot, then it's telling. Then it's a telling test, and then you should be careful with. Why is this test so good? Because if you're so stiff that you don't have normal range of motion with your posterior chain, some of the links of this chain are very stiff, and the links of these chains are very important. It's all the vertebra, and your pelvis, and your legs, right? So we don't want any loss of function in any of those links when we're working out, especially like if you're doing heavy weight lifting, or actually if you're running or anything like that, right? And so it's a very telling, important test, and so that's why we prefer it. You could use other physiological tests like a grip or a tap test. Don't worry too much about them. I feel like this is easier to implement. It's easy to track. You do it in and out in a fast way, and so it's super good. Awesome. So how do we use this information? So as we said at the beginning, you're gonna create a baseline for all your metrics. If you're really good at numbers and this, creating that baseline with an average and with some variances will be way more meaningful, right? And so you can do that for each test. You know, like take out your spreadsheet and like do it for a month, and you'll create an awesome baseline. And so that way, when you measure in a given day, you'll know how meaningful those measures are. But now, how to interpret these results, and this is the harder part. So, for example, if both, and this usually is what happens, if both your bolt test and your cardio, you know, like your resting heart rate or your HRV are both low, but you have good mobility from the toe touch test and you have a good rate of perceived readiness, then maybe today is not the day of doing a lot of cardio. Maybe today is the day of doing a lot of weights, right? It's the day to doing a lot of gymnastics, for example, something that is not going to demand a lot from your cardiovascular system. Or it could even be you know, light anaerobic rowing or something like that. It doesn't have to be like cardio or not, but you know that your cardiorespiratory system cannot be taxed that much, right? It's recovering a little bit. Good. If on the other hand, for example, your cardiorespiratory measures are really good, but like your toe touch test is shit, and maybe today is a good day to push that run. And you quite often will find that like that this kind of like following this test, for reading your body and following this test, it's gonna be actually very productive, because you'll be able to like hit the system that is ready to be hit and leave the system alone. But anyhow, so if the toe touch test is not like there's muscular fatigue, there's muscular stiffness, but cardiorespiratory, you can go, maybe row, maybe bike, right? Something that doesn't require a ton of mobility, but that will allow you to do some cardiorespiratory work. If 3 of them are off, right, like, and really off, I would say like today maybe is not the day to work out. Maybe some light recovery thing, right? And maybe just a walk, right? And if 4 of them are completely off, then definitely stay in bed. Good. And so you can play with all those 4 measures. What is going to be more meaningful is that this is a long-term project for you. And what you're going to do is, if you have a journal of your workouts, which you should, and you're tracking your measures, and you can match performance to measures, all these measures are gonna suddenly open up to you. You need to learn how to read your body, and you know, like, I cannot do that for you with rules. And so, just because I don't know your body very well, although I do. But anyhow, so, you know, like at the beginning, like you're gonna be able to just read the obvious, like, yeah, if both cardiovasculars are down, as we said before, wait. But some days when like one is off and the other is off, like the interpretation is not so clear, and you modulate your stress, you'll see how is your performance in a given workout. You're gonna be learning a lot, and you're gonna be able to match performance with the test, and that means that over time the test is gonna become much more productive, right? And so the underlying implication of all these methods that are very simple, they're like, I picked these ones, there's many more. There's a grip test, as you know, like as I told you, there's a better emotional test, but I feel like these 4 are very applicable. Like they're very easy, like you don't have to think, and all you need to do is track and match, right? Like, so ask yourself how ready you are, track your numbers, and then match your performance. And this continuous action of asking yourself how ready you are and looking at how you perform and observing, just being a scientist on yourself, is going to become very meaningful. And over time, you're going to be able to give your body exactly what it's ready for. And that is going to be very, very productive. That is it.